Hey everyone, pleasure to see you here live, or for those of you who will watch us on the recording. Pleasure meeting you. I'm Shachar. I'm VP Product and Strategy here at EverAfter. I have here Brendon Kahun, which is Head of Customer Success at Walnut, that will introduce himself in a moment. And we are here to discuss in the upcoming 30 minutes about a super important topic on how to transform content into actionable steps. We're going to talk about why is it important and to share with you some best practices on how you can do that. This webinar is recorded, as you can see. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or to send the questions on the chat, and we'll be happy to take them. So, hey, Brendon, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Thanks for having me, Shahar.
Oh, our pleasure. Would you like to introduce yourself and Walnut a bit?
Sure. So I am head of customer success at Walnut. That means I'm responsible for gross retention as well as expansion across our existing book of business. Walnut is a interactive demo platform. We're about a 3-year-old startup. We believe the SaaS process is painful. It's long. There's too many touch points. It's painful for the buyer. It's costly. And so we've developed a platform that enables our buyers and prospects to tell their story, allow customers to see their product, to feel it, but also to tailor that message based off of the appropriate persona, use case, and the person that you're directing towards. So simply put, we capture your front end of your platform with the assistance of guides, annotations, variables for personalization. We allow you to tell that story. So as you can see here, we're leveraged throughout the full customer funnel, from top of funnel through the sales process, as well as through customer success and post-sale. Do a number of things as well from an enablement standpoint, but drive a number of positive business outcomes throughout. But also, I think what strings this all together, it also enables you to give a consistent experience, a consistent message to your prospect or your customer.
That's a really, really, really cool product. Just a bit about EverAfter, for those of you who are not familiar, we are a B2B customer interface platform in which you can tailor a personalized, actionable, and engaging interface, again, throughout the lifecycle stages, from mutual POCs plan to onboarding structure. You can even share actionable QBRs and post-onboarding collaboration. So all of this can be surfaced within this customer interface. And what's nice, I think, both about Walnut and EverAfter, that we specialize in how to convert a lot of content into something that customers and prospects can actually act upon and feel it in themselves. So with that, I think we can just start our conversation for today. I would like to start with maybe going back 10, 12, I don't know how many years ago. And let's try to think about what type of content customer success organizations had 10 years ago, comparing to what they have now to share with the customers.
I might date you a bit, but I also go back almost 20 years with my professional career in CS and go-to-market. So even 20 years ago, dramatic changes from heavy in-person training, a lot over the phone, and needing to guide folks through software with what we used to call directional directions, to training labs where you'd bring in an army of customers, and just a very costly experience, to then 10 years ago, you had much more of a focus, I would say, on product enablement, right? So deep knowledge bases, academy, maybe some academy that you had in there, but for the most part, it was a big one-to-many hub of content. You had some digital assets like PowerPoints, PDFs, but still probably a good bit of just in-person physical content, product sheets, Manila. Can still feel that type of paper that you don't really get anymore. So obviously things have changed quite a bit. I'd say everyone is somewhere on their evolution from just product training to really, I think about it as driving business outcomes. So somewhere in that maturation process, hopefully you're on that path. So it's not just how to use this tool, it's how am I going to drive impact within the product. But I think also where you get more sophisticated is when you can drive impact for the individual, where you can drive impact for the overall organization as well. And I think as SaaS just continues to proliferate and stem off and strip away different parts of the business, that just adds as well to the overall complexity, permutations of customer types, stacks of, different tech stacks that you have to fit into, personas that you're working with. So while I think we've recognized this is complicated, my tool does a lot now for a lot of different people. I can't just give them one static piece of content. I need to really try to understand what my customer cares about, how we're going to fit into their organization, what their business is driving towards. So it's definitely starting to shift a good bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like 10 years ago, you had some resources that you could share. A lot of this was during like calls, etc. And the resources that you had were like indeed like one too many. You had like a knowledge base, customers would enter, they had like few specific articles in it. And I think that as a part of how much customer success profession has evolved, now we have much more like individuals or much more roles that can contribute content to customers, from customer education and product marketing and support and customer success managers and customer enablement. And we have a lot of different people that can contribute content, and still the content is but also expectations from customers that the product will do a lot more than they expected 10 years ago. So it creates like this interesting equation that I think that is really, really good, but also some challenges around it.
Great point around just customers, and they're more technical today than certainly 10 years ago. A lot more folks who grew up digitally native, and to your point, design has also just improved a lot, right? So I think customers are expecting to be able to pick up a tool and know how to use it, where I probably earned my chops back in the day because I like to figure out different products and applications, where that's not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, and I think that this one also changed a bit the way that we expect that products will behave. I think that customer success now, in terms of the different content that we have, and maybe the amount of content, customer success entered like the era of TMI. You can even say that we have so much content to share, and now it's our responsibility maybe to share it in the most like relevant way to customers. How based on, and I know that you work with a lot of customer success and sales and post-sales organizations, how do you usually content is being shared based on what you see?
So you brought up a few different points too, in terms of all of these different groups that are producing content now, and they recognize they need to. But what I think, in my experience, companies aren't holistically bringing that all together well. And I think that's probably the next challenge, is how do I synthesize all of this, make it consistent, not create double effort, but then make things actionable. In terms of making things actionable and how things are getting leveraged, I think you've certainly seen much more commonplace with CS orgs that they have some type of customer success platform. They're heavily reliant on their CRM data, product usage. So we're becoming a lot more data driven with the work that we're doing. And via that, we are able to start to tee up content that is more appropriate based off of the persona, based off of how they're interacting with our platform, based off of the outcomes that they're trying to get to, where they're at within their customer journey. So I think you're starting to see a lot more of that. You're seeing improved customer education tools like a MindTickle, for example, that just provides a richer enablement and learning experience. I'd say a big thing as well that I'm a huge fan of is in-app notifications, right? You mentioned there's a lot of content that we have. There's just a lot of content being produced out in the world, a lot of noise. So I'm a big fan of meeting customers where they're at. And so tools like Intercom, Pendo, or WalkMe that can actually push content right into your platform where the users are. I think it's super effective. It's timely. It's actionable. Ideally, it also makes sense and is relevant for where the user is at.
What happens maybe if a company doesn't have like a clear content strategy?
What happened? I mean, it depends even like where they are at, right? So I think if to build the reason we developed the content strategy is we recognized historically we just threw people at a problem, right? If your organization has customer success or a snowflake version of that, some type of post-sale specialized role, they're recognizing the product and company does not get your customers to the desired outcomes on their own, at least predictably, consistently, and I'm sure they're also buying into the fact that this is also a really important growth engine. So how do I also get growth here and make sure people are on that pathway from just the importance of recurring revenue? So if you have zero, right, you are throwing people at a process. You are at best providing or an inconsistent experience. At worst, you're providing ineffective experience if you know what's being led by that person, which isn't scaled effectively, doesn't land. If you are simply sending out the same thing to every customer, unless you really are a specific tool, you are likely not hitting the mark and putting effective content in front of every user. And I think there's also, I talked about noise. There's also the perception of you as a brand and the perception of you as being able to help drive to those outcomes, as well as the quality of the content that you're coming in. Everybody's probably filtering out email. They are moving things away. They are blocking certain content. So I think also just the cost of putting invaluable content out there as well is going to limit your ability to get that customer back with future outreach, even if you are to improve and mature your content strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in order for us as organizations, in order for us to achieve our business goals, which is like time to value and expansion and retention, and so our customers need to achieve their outcomes. And in order for them to achieve their outcomes, they have to do stuff. They have to use features. They have to understand how to do. They need to leverage new functionalities. They need to understand how to train additional team members on our solution. So there's like a lot of actions that they need to do. And if we don't plan this content strategy, so it creates this noise. And I think that like us as human beings, we are really, really good at filtering stuff that we don't think that are relevant for us. So if I would just get an access to a super robust and super like detailed resources, knowledge base, Google Doc, whatever, if I don't understand maybe what I'm expected and what's in it for me, then I might just do some other stuff. So I think that us as organizations, we have to keep that in mind, that we are not the only product probably our customers use each day.
Not the only product, and certainly your buyers and the leaders you're likely selling to also have tens of priorities, if not hundreds, that they're juggling all the time too. So it's also how do you stay relevant? How do you stay top of mind without being too noisy as well as being low effort for use?
Okay, so working on a content strategy is important, because if not, customers might fail to do the important stuff that we need them to do. And when they don't do it, they will not achieve their outcomes and we will not achieve our outcomes. How to fix it, or how to plan this content strategy?
So I guess how I think about this is really just doing a big zoom out and really try to create a blueprint of what I would call your use case taxonomy. So understanding the outcomes that your software is driving to and what those use cases are, and really starting to not just define, I think we've become pretty commonplace in the CS world to develop a customer journey, but where we still have room to grow is developing what I'll call a user journey. So not just what do I need to get this customer up and running, seeing some type of results, but how do I zoom in even more to get the right persona on the path that they need to go. And it's not too different, but it's very specific and zoomed in. So I think starting just with the overall blueprint of everything, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I need to provide assistance at each step of this user journey that my product doesn't make obvious, or perhaps I can up level the customer a little bit at this point, not just see some success, but mature them and take them up a level with what they are doing to produce more likely that positive outcome. So
Yeah.
I'd say start there. I think the other thing to think about is then those channels for distribution. You mentioned a couple there. I think you also have to accept that social media, email, Slack are also a lot of noise for folks, but everybody's different. Everybody's going to want to consume content in their own way. So I think being able to provide multiple channels as well for folks and a good diversity of that is important. But again, you want to make sure you're getting it there when they want it to be there and they're able to see it and it's not becoming too much noise, right? So it's a tough dance to go down. But again, that's why I like just the in-app ability. You're meeting your customer when they're there. It's timely. Simple example, customer clicks on a new feature of yours for the first time. Why not send them a training article? Or did they drop off, right? Or did they actually leverage it a bit? And maybe this feature is going to lead you towards an upsell and you have an expansion opportunity as well. So I think also just diving in at those opportunities are critical.
Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, a good content strategy will contain like a lot of obviously like actionable components that it's very clear what is expected. It's very clear how to do what I'm expected to do. So for example, if you send a customer a recommendation that based on a lot of like metrics, you understood that the specific customer need to do something. So it's one thing to tell them, hey, you should do something. And another thing is to actually break it down to a very like bite-sized pieces tasks that can really motivate them to do that. And also it should be obviously like curated. And I think that there's a really nice terminology. Usually it's been used on marketing of best next action. And I think that we should actually borrow it also to customer success organizations, because at any given time, we should understand, and I think it's super challenging to really understand what is this best next action that each customer or each user should perform. Do I start with those like highly complex, low impact items, or do I start with the low hanging fruit to get them like started and motivated? Because this could actually help maybe in the long run.
I have not heard that phrase, but get it, and it resonates real well. I also might even add in what is the fastest path to ensuring value too.
Yeah.
And so starting that next step almost as a first step. What's the best first step? What's the best first action to be taking to ensure they're up and running and seeing value as quickly as possible?
Yeah. Definitely. And I think that, of course, it should be personalized to who they are as a persona based on their goals, based on their level of knowledge. So it could be that if the first time that I'm a Salesforce admin whenever I create a Salesforce workspace, for example, so if they will ask me, are you familiar with Salesforce? Or maybe it's a bad example. So based on that, based on my familiarity with this product, I can maybe curate a different experience for them.
Makes sense.
So I know that basically, if we go back to the Walnut's solution, you could actually even before giving access to prospects to the actual product, you could let them touch this product, right? You could actually give them the ability to play or interact with what we expect them to purchase. What's your take on that? Do you think that there's like what outcomes can that thing do?
Yeah, no, I think it's speeding up intent, it's speeding up the top of funnel process. We have more educated buyers out there. There is plenty of resources out there. Review sites probably is step one to understand what the market is and what people are saying. But I think rather than jumping on a call, to not have a barrier of entry and to be able to get a product tour of a product that's super powerful. So you as a buyer, your next step, you're coming in with some intent and probably a lot more specific conversation to have with a pre-sale team in terms of, is this going to work for me? You get past the, so what the heck do you do here? Which, I think your traditional website for a SaaS company doesn't do a great job at. Outbound is, uh, you know, uh, noisy at best, even if they are able to cleanly articulate what they are doing. So I think just being able to speed up and get to the aha at the user's pace and when they're ready for it, I think is humongously powerful, especially as they're canvassing the market. I
Yeah.
think a good differentiator for you as an organization is to have a tool like a Walnut, to differentiate yourself, again, to already create a positive connection with a potential buyer.
Yeah, I think that if I'm not mistaken, on all of like the Apple stores, there's a very specific angle that iPhones are like stand, because it's in a way that you cannot really see the screen, so it enforces you to touch it, and based on their research, once you touch it, you're like getting a bit more attached to it, so it increases the chances. So I think it's kind of the same, right? Whenever you actually give them the ability to see how it's going to look like, to help them here, this is how you will do it. It almost like, also there's like the IKEA effect that whenever we contribute to something, we have like we have a higher perception of, or a higher value perception of it.
Sure. Familiarity, a lot of psychological impacts you just rattled off there.
Yes. Yes. So I think that the individual also is really important, because whenever we need to train, it's not only to train or to onboard an organization. I mean, of course, there are like items that the entire organization will need to do, but also like the individuals, because we always onboard new individuals on the journey, right? We have like the company-based journey, but then we always have like new champions, new decision makers that we need also to apply a really, really good content strategy that maybe will be different from the organization onboarding.
For sure. I think that's something that we've really started to think a lot more of, getting past just getting our organizations active, figuring out what that best first use case is. How do we continuously onboard? How do we, you know, direct? We have different types of user types within our platform. How do we get the right content in front of them? They don't need to see the admin capabilities if they are just presenting walnuts, for example. How do we make it clean, quick, actionable? Yeah, again, you run the risk of putting content that doesn't matter, that doesn't resonate in front of a user, hurting your brand, hurting the quality of, or at least perceived quality of the content that actually is valuable for the user.
Yeah. Okay. So how technology can help with that, can help you leverage the content strategy?
I guess I rattled off a couple of tools. I think what though is probably critical for a number of these things is you have to have a clean data lake of one, just CRM hygiene, two, product usage and making sure that data marries well, is accurate. So you can be effective with, say, focusing on specific cohorts based off of that data that you have. So I think it starts there, foundational too. If you don't have that, crap in, crap out for sure. And maybe just another comment on that. I prefer to think about responsibilities and desired outcomes versus a title, as I think certain titles really could mean a number of different things. I said certainly in CS it means a lot of different things. But I think normally multiple use cases are going to hit a specific title. So you can build those user journeys better if you're focused on outcome as well as responsibility. In terms of additional technologies that I haven't already mentioned, we can chat about ourselves. I think what EverAfter and Walnut are really good at is providing a somewhat of a choose your own adventure approach to. Both platforms have the ability for you to come in and state, either what your focus is or what goals you have with the tool to basically send them out down the right tree or branch of the tree in terms of training and next steps. I'd say social, certainly, and leveraging social is still something that I think people need to start really adopting more and figuring out and being truly effective with it. People want to buy from their peers and want to buy from things that they know. And I'd say, obviously, what's coming down the pike is what AI chatbots can do for success and just SaaS in general. If you're familiar with Balaji Srinivasan, recently mentioned first they put the office in the cloud. Now they're bringing the employee online. So I might be paraphrasing a little bit there, but you're seeing a lot more purpose-built LLMs that are sucking in all this content and trained as a specific employee. You see it in legal, certainly coding, but I think you're also starting to see it in CS. I saw it, took a look at an interesting tool not too long ago called the Berry app, YC funded, and they're really focused on creating an onboarding, basically CSM, and really trying to create the CSM in AI. They're not coming for our jobs yet, but I think just super effective in terms of we're probably not at a stage yet, just from a scale and data standpoint. But if you are a larger organization, I definitely would consider taking a look. But really, they're sucking in context about you that the user is inputting. And then with all the content that you fed into it, really starting to lead them on an effective onboarding journey, not just a better support KB chatbot, which you see the Zendesks of the world are already spitting out, but it's an improved buyer experience, but also helps you as an organization with your content strategy because you're basically allowing AI to do a lot of the filtering for you versus building all of these different trees based off of all the different permutations.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that now we have much more technology dedicated and that allow us to do this ultra personalization that we didn't have even five years ago. I see that we have a question here from Nick, and maybe it relates to what we've covered. Should the type of content vary depending on the customer segment? Example, should strategic customer get something different than the commercial startup segment at the start of their relationship? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think certainly from when you're thinking about your larger strategic customers, I would say there are generally going to be more stakeholders. So at minimum, you need to be thinking about steering the impact that you're driving and the outcome of that towards a variety of people who may not even be in your tool or touching their tool, but are responsible for the top or bottom line metric that you're driving. You're typically also, dealing with maybe some restrictions on their end if they are a tighter IT shop. So you might have limitations in terms of what types of content, what technologies you can be leveraging. But they're also probably leveraging a much wider and broader tech stack as well that you're going to need to be spitting into versus your smaller ones are going to be a bit more clean, right, in terms of how they're going to plug you in. But the challenge there, I would say, is you need to make that engagement more engaging. You're going to see a lot more responsibilities spread across the smaller orgs than your larger orgs, which makes it a lot more challenging to keep your platform as a priority. So I think definitely thinking about how do you make this content as engaging as possible, entertaining as possible, what's in it for me, so that it stays at their top of their list.
Yeah, I agree completely. I would like just to add on that in a larger organization, beyond the potential complexity, you maybe have much more different stakeholders that were not involved in the buying process. And it's like you will need to catch and to motivate them maybe in a different way. If you sell to a small organization, maybe the same person bought, implemented, and will renew. But once it's bigger than that, the content strategy should take this into consideration as well.
Absolutely.
I do want to highlight that in many cases it's very easy for us to focus on how to onboard new users or new customers, I think that content strategy or how to better create actions should definitely be in our focus post onboarding, because onboarding, there's like a very relatively clear line between like when do we see the first value, etc. But then we need to provide additional value, and they need to achieve additional outcomes. So we also have to plan like a content strategy for post implementation phase.
For sure. We do a number of that as here at Walnut. Again, specifically looking at a lot of just usage information, activity that we've got in our CSP. Is there a new touch point that, that use case of jumping in and being able to send some training to someone who's touching something for the first time? I also think a bit about a maturity model. So even when we get a customer to we'll call it baseline adoption level, how do we help take them to the next level, continue to educate them, continue to push more value in front of them, right? So I know this persona, they usually care about X, Y, and Z. They're just doing X. Let's be sure we're educating them on Y and Z. I think you then also jump into what that customer is also going to be seeking is not just how do I use your platform, but give me some best practices, right? And tell me how I can actually do my job better, which probably needs its own topic of and webinar in terms of needing to really understand your consumer and educating them and driving them towards success, being a critical part today of I think how SaaS organizations are going to stand out from their competition.
Definitely. All right, last question from my end. So let's say that we were able to convince some of the people here that thinking and building a content strategy can be really, really beneficial. How can we measure if we're able to succeed in that?
So I think certainly starts with a lot of the foundational things we've talked about: clean data hygiene, clear understanding, as well as how you're performing as a business, to then, all right, we're going to introduce something. Now we need to go test it and see how it's doing. So any of the tech that we've talked about, they're probably going to have some type of analytics involved in them, at least any of them that are worth their salt. You may need to do a little bit of effort to extract that or combine that in another platform to associate that with the typical metrics that you're driving towards, be it gross retention, onboarding time to value, feature adoption, et cetera, all those things. You need to correlate that data so that, not only are they doing this, but is it actually driving to the results that we are hypothesizing that this expects to?
Yeah.
Establish baselines, as well as baselines across different cohorts of companies, be it based off of segment, be it strategic versus your commercial, different industries. If you got multiple product lines, you need to really be smart and be thinking about what you're comparing what to what. And then I think just A/B testing, fire off two different options based off of what you're trying to do, see what lands and what does better, and continue to optimize and improve.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we're able to achieve more outcomes in a shortened time, then this is also could be something to try to measure and to understand.
Totally.
All right. I think that those were the questions that we've planned for today. And if you have any questions, I'm going to share now on this screen. If you would like to chat or to connect or just to talk about how to build and maximize your content strategy, I think that both of us would be really, really happy to catch up and meet, and etc. So here are our, I think, Calendly links, if I'm not mistaken. And thank you so much for joining me in this webinar. I know that this content can be really helpful for a lot of customer success organizations. So thank you.